Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. In today's video, I am going to be discussing the Utah Jazz with a particular focus on this guy right here, Donovan Mitchell. However, before I get too far into it, I would like to remind you all to leave a like and subscribe. I've been appreciating all the support that I've been receiving lately, and I hope to see that continue. Now, without further ado, let's talk about the Jazz. The specific drop back for me making this video is the Jazz's win against the Pelicans last night, but I don't really think that I'm going to be pinpointing too many exact moments from that game. I mostly just want to talk about this team in general because they've been playing really well lately. They have gone on a, I believe, 5 or 6 game win streak that has vaulted them into the top two teams in the Western Conference. I think that they sit half a game back of the Lakers at this point. And I think that a lot of people are really underrating what Utah has done so far this season. Now, last year, this team had a pretty roller coaster season as they started off quite poorly and then got it going at a very high level for a few months in the middle of the season, where we saw them ride a huge win streak right towards that top of the Western Conference. I think they were in the top 3 or 4 at one point. But after that, they started playing poorly again, and their flaws defensively were really being exploited by their opponents. And we saw them finish as the 6th seed in the Western Conference. Then they entered the playoffs and the bubble as a whole without their second leading scorer and a 20-point per game scorer, someone who was really important to their offensive success in Bojan Bogdanovic. And they were still able to put up a very successful, not successful because they lost, but they still put up a very strong fight in the first round of the playoffs against the Denver Nuggets with my guy Donovan right here, in particular, really performing at a high level. But in the end, it just was not quite enough to push them on into the second round as they blew a 3-1 lead, and Mike Conley's game winner at the end of Game 7 rimmed out. And had they moved on, I think that they probably would have given that Lakers team a solid challenge. Do I think that they would have beaten them the way that the Denver Nuggets did? No, I don't. I think that the Clippers are genuinely a pretty bad matchup for this Jazz team. A bit more on that later. But I do think they could have taken a game or two from that Clippers team, and had that happened, I think people would have been looking at the Jazz a lot differently heading into this season than they were in actuality. I also think that the Jazz had a pretty solid offseason. Now, this is a team that I was a little bit critical of because I thought that they could have used their spending power in a better way. I thought that adding a 3-and-D wing, using their mid-level exception, would be more beneficial to them than signing a guy like Derek Favors to be their backup big guy coming off the bench. But so far, I'm really understanding why they made this move for Favors. Last season, in that Nuggets series, a spot where this Jazz team really struggled was when Rudy Gobert was off the court. They weren't particularly good at all defensively throughout the series, but particularly when Rudy was not in the game, they bled points and allowed the other team in Denver to just score at a monumentous rate. Tony Bradley and Ed Davis were not doing a thing to stop the opposing defensive players. But the signing of Derek Favors to play those backup 5-man minutes has really boded well for them so far. You can see the benefits of having a guy who can come off the bench and play in that Rudy Gobert role as a high-level rim protector who's able to block shots and really just provide a strong anchor in the paint for your defense. And that's so important to the drop coverage scheme that Quinn Snyder has run during his time in Utah. And on the offensive end, Favors is maybe even a little bit better than Rudy because, while he isn't the same level of screen setter, he has better hands, which allows him to catch lob passes a little bit better, although he doesn't have insane verticality on those plays. He has pretty good touch at the rim and is able to finish at a high level. and he also is a better free throw shooter than Rudy Gobert. So, like, Derek Favors is not as good as Rudy Gobert, and it's not close. But I think Favors is probably a top 20 starter in the NBA, and to have a guy like that coming off your bench and giving you 15 to 20 minutes a night is really, really useful, especially in a situation where Rudy Gobert could be getting into foul trouble. Last season, that would have spelled doom for this team. This season, they have a really solid second option in Derek Favors. So I have come around to that move, and I think that it can make this team quite a bit better. The outline for the Jazz to be successful is you have a large number of perimeter creators who are able to score the ball at a high level on the offensive end of the floor and are able to shoot the lights out and move the ball very, very well. And on defense, you have somewhat capable defenders on the perimeter who are pretty much just able to lead their players inside for Rudy Gobert to do his job as an elite rim protector. So that is, how this team can win. They need to hit their threes, they need to be moving the ball well, and they need Rudy Gobert to play well defensively, or Derek Favors, whoever the big man may be. And so far, I think that Rudy Gobert has done a really nice job. His rim protection abilities are, at this point, being a little bit underrated. I think that people have started to fall on the other side of the tracks on Rudy Gobert and started to think of him as a guy who's not even like a top 5 center in the NBA. And I think he's still number 3. I think that what he does defensively is more important to helping a team win than what Karl Towns does offensively. So I think that Rudy's the 3rd best center in the NBA behind Jokic and Embiid. And that can't be underrated because what he does defensively is so important to what this team does. Now, obviously, you have the shot blocking, and you know what you're going to get from him there. But he just does so many other things, such as intimidating opposing players into taking floaters and mid-range jumpers, which are really low efficiency shots that are usually not worth taking, even if it means that you are going to have to go into a guy like Rudy Gobert and get your shot blocked. You have a better chance of drawing a foul there or just making the layup than you do of hitting the mid-range shot. So that's really important. He's able to use his insane length to get in the passing lane and knock the ball away. And that is also really important and allows this Jazz team to get into transition where they are usually playing unselfishly and moving the ball at a high level. Now, that defense, when Rudy's great, is going to help this team win. And the offensive support from players like Joe Ingles, Jordan Clarkson, Mike Conley is super important. And those guys have been playing well so far this season. Conley didn't have his best game tonight, but I liked what I saw from Clarkson, putting up 18, 6, and 6. He was 4 for 9 from 3. Joe Ingles had 15 points and was 5 for 6 from 3. And both of those two guys are not... Oh, Ingles is a very, very good playmaker, but Jordan Clarkson is solid as well. He's able to make some pretty solid passes. He's not a high-level read guy, and he's not going to make a difficult pass, but when you need him to make a dump off or a kick out, he's capable of doing so. And so those guys are going to help this team out on the perimeter. Now, you might have noticed there's 2 guys that I really haven't talked about too much so far to this point, and that is number 1, Bojan Bogdanovic, and number 2, Donovan Mitchell. Now, Mitchell is the more important guy out of these 2, so I'll touch on him a little bit later. But with Bojan, they just need him to step up and start hitting shots at a higher level. Tonight, he had 11 points on 4 for 11 shooting, 3 for 8 from 3. And this whole season as a whole, he's just been so inconsistent. He's struggled to shoot the ball at a high level in terms of efficiency. And they need him to be better. They need him to be scoring at that 20-point per game level that he was last year, because that's what their path is to having a top-level offense. When Donovan Mitchell is giving you 25 points per game and Conley's giving you 20 and Bogdanovic is giving you 20, Well, that's a really strong nucleus on the offensive end of the floor right there. And that's going to give them a really good chance at winning games. So if Bojan is not doing that and he is struggling to hit shots and looking like he is slowing down a little bit in terms of his NBA career, well, that's troublesome for this Jazz team because they are paying him a lot of money over the next 3 seasons, and they also need his offensive production in order to reach their peak. So, number one, he's got to be better, but I think that as he continues to be rid of himself of the rust that comes along with missing all the time that he did with his broken wrist, he will start to play better. The guy who really will swing this Jazz team come playoff time is Donovan Mitchell. Now, Donovan is one of my favorite players in the league, but I can't help but acknowledge how important this season is for him as a player. Now, number one, if he makes an All-NBA team, he earns a massive bonus on his contract moving forward. He earns the Rose Rule Supermax for his rookie scale extension, which would pay him around, I think, $190 million over the next 5 years. Otherwise, he gets, I think, about $160 million. So clearly, that is a big deal, and he's going to have to step up his production in order to make one of those All-NBA teams. But in terms of a winning standpoint, they just need him to be more consistent as a scorer and especially more consistent as a playmaker, because he's really the spoon that stirs the drink for this Jazz team on the offensive end of the floor. There are not too many guys who can create their own shot on this team. I guess Mike Conley can, but outside of him and Donovan, there's not too much. Joe Ingles relies on pick and roll stuff. Jordan Clarkson, I guess he can create his own shot, but I mean, they're all over the place. He's been playing great so far this season. High candidate for Sixth Man of the Year, but I'm not sure you want to count on him to create his own shot in late game situations. Bojan, who knows what you're getting from him? He's got to start hitting shots, as I said before. So a lot of that shot creation ability in isolation situations is going to fall on the shoulders of Donovan Mitchell. And I really think he's capable of shouldering that, as he has showcased great skill as a 3-level scorer. He's improved in the in-between game with his floater starting to go in at a much higher rate over the past few seasons. He's improved his step back and sidestep 3-pointers, and he also is a knockdown guy off catch and shoots, so he can obviously score from beyond the arc. And he's always been a high flyer inside the paint and someone who has a multitude of ways to finish at the rim. So what needs to improve with him is the decision making. At times we see him get careless with the ball, he gets caught up in the air, and he ends up either throwing the ball away or forcing a very difficult shot. So he can't catch himself in those situations. That's something he has to improve on. There were a few times today where that actually boded well for the Jazz, as he would leap up in the air, he would swing his head around, and he would find a wide open Bojan Bogdanovic or Mike Conley out of nowhere and kick it out to them for a wide open 3. It's what I guess you could call a skip, like you're skipping. I guess it's a skip pass, yeah. So he's essentially of skipping the middleman in what is a swing. He's just sending it straight to the wide open shooter whose defender is collapsing to the corner to take that guy on, finding someone at the top of the key for a wide open look. And that's a difficult pass, and Donovan did it multiple times at a high level. But there are other times where he tries to make that pass and ends up throwing the ball away. There are also times where he takes some boneheaded 3-point shots where he could get to the rim, or when it's early in the shot clock and he needs to try to initiate the offense a little bit more before settling. So there are areas he needs to improve, but if he can make those improvements, improve the decision making, that's really the big area for him. And if that comes along, then watch out. This Jazz team is a real contender. When it comes to the playoffs, I think that this team is probably the third best in the Western Conference right now, trailing only the two LA teams. And I think that this team could give the Lakers a run for their money and perhaps even win a series against the Lake Show and reach the Western Conference Finals if it came to that, because of I think they just have a pretty good matchup. They have two very strong guards in Mike Conley and Donovan Mitchell, and outside of Wesley Matthews, who hasn't been receiving too many minutes for the Lakers don't really have too many high-level perimeter defenders outside of LeBron James, who is asked to do so much on the offensive end. He's not exactly going to be taking on difficult matchup against opposing offense initiators on the other team. So that, in combination with having someone like Rudy Gobert, who you can throw at Anthony Davis and really make him work, that could be a really dangerous matchup for the Lakers, and I think that the Jazz would have a real shot at winning that. Against the Clippers, it's another question. The Clippers have strong perimeter defenders, and someone like Serge Ibaka would really make Gobert work, as Ibaka is a solid floor spacer, and that would prevent Gobert from being able to just camp out in the paint all the time. But I do think that this Jazz team is good enough to make a run to the Western Conference Finals, and I'm excited to see how they continue to evolve. Keep your eyes on Donovan Mitchell, because he could be one of the biggest X factors in the entire NBA this season, depending on how his game continues to develop. Let me know what you thought of this video in the comment section down below. How do you envision the rest of the season going for the Jazz? Will they be able to hang on to a top 3 seed in the Western Conference? Let me know your thoughts. Leave a like and subscribe if you did enjoy this video. That's going to be it for me. Ladies and gentlemen, I will see you all again very soon.